In this video, I'm going to dive deeper into impact mapping by breaking down its characteristics and how you create an impact map. An impact map is a collaborative tool that brings a potentially diverse group of people, such as developers, stakeholders, administrators, etc., together to come up with a map for a product or project. Impact maps help you visualize the product goals, what users, also called personas, will be involved in meeting those goals, and the deliverables that will achieve the goals, what personas they affect, and how. It's a complete roadmap from product goal to deliverable. One big benefit of an impact map is that it aligns the business objectives and needs with a realistic and attainable plan for achieving them. It's great for aligning members of different teams in understanding the goals and agreeing on the proposed solutions. Now let's look at exactly what goes into an impact map. This is an example of an impact map layout. It starts at the left with your business goals for your product or project. It's important that these goals be specific, because to break down specific features or user stories, we need to start with specific goals. Next, we define personas. These are all the people that are involved in delivering a solution for that business goal. For example, if your business goal is to improve the sales of a company, the persona would likely be a member of that company who will be directly using your solution, which might be a software product. Next comes impacts. How do those personas impact you meeting your business goal? Perhaps one persona from the aforementioned company is a salesperson, and the impact would be that they'd make more sales. Deliverables are spawned off of impacts. These describe what exactly you're going to deliver in response to the impact of the persona to meet the business goal. In our example of the salesman persona needing to make more sales, we might propose as a deliverable a software product that can run standalone on their laptop, which lets them give more dynamic presentations to potential sales targets and easily collect feedback that they can query later for ideas on improving. Finally, the deliverables are broken into user stories. These describe the units of work to be performed to meet the deliverable. They typically take the form of who, what, and why. Who being the persona, what being the deliverable, and why being the impact. In our case, a user story might be, as a salesperson for company X, I want a better sales presentation tool so I can lessen time spent with each sales target and improve sales numbers. In summary, the impact map shows a clear progression from left to right from business goal to user stories that can be added to a Scrum sprint. Note that at each level there may be multiple next items. A business goal could spawn multiple relevant personas, each of which can be associated with multiple impacts, etc. You should also consider the priority of items at each column. For instance, certain impacts may be more dominant to a persona than others, and the deliverables associated to each impact can also be prioritized according to their importance and how quickly they should be done to address the impact. Here are some common applications for impact mapping. I know from experience that it isn't uncommon for companies to be vague about their strategies for certain products or projects. Perhaps the product was spawned from an initial idea that seemed good at the time, but the organization hasn't taken much time since to analyze the product to see how it actually aligns with business goals. Impact mapping is a great way to determine the clear connections a product has with the company's business goals. There can also be a lack of clarity in your development team or other teams related to a product on the mapping of the product's features to business goals. Impact mapping is a participatory way to get everyone involved and on the same page about mapping between business objectives and product work. An impact map visualizes very clearly the value of the product to the company. A product with many strong mappings back to business goals is clearly a useful product, whereas a product with no clear connection with business goals may not be. Finally, since the end result of impact maps is typically user stories, it's a great iterative tool to generate thought-out stories for planning your next sprint. It can also be used by a Scrum team for more long-term release planning. One of the hardest parts of impact mapping can be getting started. To do that, you need a business goal. This might sound easy in theory, but in reality, it can be difficult to define just what you want a product to achieve from a business standpoint. This is not the time for mission statements or generalities, which have their place but are not specific enough for impact mapping. To help, consider following the SMART framework. SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Try to come up with a business goal that checks all the SMART framework boxes. Then you know you have something clear enough to start your impact map with. Next, prioritize this goal. How important is it that you achieve it? This usually translates to how beneficial is it to the company if it's achieved, and how damaging might it be to the company if it's not achieved, or not achieved in a given amount of time. You may have multiple business goals, and each could spawn their own impact map. This helps you decide which goals should be focused on first. Finally, be specific about what success looks like. How will you measure success of the goal? Remember that if you followed the SMART framework, you should have something measurable. So clarify how you're going to measure it, so you will recognize if and when you've succeeded. So let's finish by reviewing the impact mapping process. First, you identify personas. These are the people you need to address in order to meet your goal. It's worth mentioning here that personas are not always positive. They might also be actors who get in the way of your goal. For instance, if your goal is to improve your sales, a persona worth considering might be your competitor. Then you would have to determine what actions you'll have to take to retain sales that persona might steal from you. Next, you identify one or more impacts each persona has on your journey to achieve your goal. Then, for each impact, you identify one or more deliverables that will help you deal with the impact. If it's a positive impact, such as a customer willing to pay you to improve their website, then the deliverable might be software to help achieve that impact. If it's a negative impact, such as a competitor, the deliverable might be a plan to outsell that competitor persona to minimize the impact the persona has, which is taking your sales. Note that deliverables are not always software deliverables. You can think of deliverables as responses that affect impacts in some way. The next step would be to create user stories to fulfill your deliverables, and estimate the effort and/or time for completing those stories. Then you can update your Scrum backlog with those stories, taking action toward achieving the initial goal.